Simply put, traffic is a risk factor for the safety of water utility road crews. Deaths to road crew workers are double that of other construction jobs and 6 times that of all types of workers. So it's obviously very dangerous.
Traffic congestion caused by work on roadways also can be both dangerous and frustrating for drivers, property owners, and pedestrians. Controlling work area traffic is a challenge whether it's on a street, in a quiet neighborhood, in a busy commercial area, or on a major interstate. But traffic can be managed to reduce both danger and inconvenience. Proper planning, signage, markers, barricades, and alert personnel are some of the requirements for successful traffic control. When construction or repair projects make it necessary for water utility crews to control traffic flow, it's critical to become familiar with the location. Here's a quick checklist for site evaluation. First, determine the scope of the work. For instance, if a pipe needs repair, how much excavation is necessary? Second, consider what type of equipment you'll need. Backhoes, loaders, and trucks impact the size of work zones. Third, evaluate the speed of traffic as well as stop signs and traffic lights that might impact drivers' approach to the site. Next, consider the street's physical features. Curves, sharp turns, hills, and valleys affect visibility for both drivers and road crews. Check on access needs for homes, businesses, and pedestrians. Also, try to get a sense of how the time of day affects traffic at the site. Is rush hour an issue you'll have to contend with? Finally, use your knowledge of these factors along with your judgment to maximize traffic flow without compromising the efficiency of your project or the safety of your crew.
Knowing as much as possible about your work site goes hand in hand with knowing what types of signage you'll need. Road signs are a language all their own, a language outlined in the Federal Highway Administration Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. This manual standardizes the use of signs for work crews and drivers and helps you control traffic.
Each type of sign and marker plays an important role in alerting drivers, slowing and directing traffic. So it's important to understand not only the recommended uses for each type of control device, but also where devices should be placed. These vary by project and type of roadway. We'll discuss some of the recommendations here, but you should consult the manual for specific guidelines as they relate to your project. If you don't have a copy, contact your area Department of Transportation. It's also available online from the U.S. Department of Transportation Highway Safety Administration website.
We're just about ready to begin, but we still need to talk to local traffic authorities to see how much advance notice they need and what kinds of permits are in order. Determine whether the roadway is under state, county, or city jurisdiction. The information and planning that you've already done will help in your discussions with local traffic officials. Once you get clearance, you're ready to go to work.
Controlling traffic at a work site means giving drivers plenty of warning that a change is coming up, helping them understand where to go, and then guiding them back into a normal traffic flow once they're past the site. Here's a bird's eye view of the 5 traffic control zones that you need to consider when preparing a site. These are the advance warning area, transition area, buffer area, work area, and termination area. The first zone is the advance warning area, where drivers get the first visual indications that they'll be encountering a work site. It's also where they should begin to slow down. A series of signs in this zone should let oncoming drivers know there's a project in front of them. Distances between the first sign and the transition zone will vary significantly depending on the speed of traffic or unique characteristics like curves and hills. On highways, the first warning sign may appear half a mile or more before the transition area. However, in cases of low-speed residential streets, the warning sign may be placed as close as 100 feet before the project. Consult the manual for specifics, but keep these general recommendations in mind. For urban streets, place the signs 4 to 8 times the speed limit apart. If the normal speed limit is 30 miles per hour, place the signs at intervals of 120 to 240 feet. On highways or rural expressways, the recommendation is 8 to 12 times the speed limit. In a 60-mile-per-hour zone, signs are placed 480 to 720 feet apart. In high-speed areas, at least 3 warning signs are recommended to slow drivers. The next area is the transition zone. It's where traffic is moved to one side or the other, or from 2 lanes down to 1. The minimum width for lanes from this point on is 10 feet, but a width of at least 12 feet is recommended. Be sure and advise drivers of significant width restrictions well in advance of the project, as some vehicles may require an alternative route. In this area, cones, signs, and barricades are placed to steer traffic in the proper direction. Cones should be placed close enough together so that drivers won't try to drive between them. This is also the area where drivers first encounter workers at the work site controlling traffic. Flaggers help direct traffic and identify and signal drivers who have not reduced their speed appropriately.
Let's take a moment to discuss the role of flagger in traffic control. Don't underestimate the importance of the flag person. This person is critical to the safety of the entire work crew and to all drivers entering the area. This person should have a thorough understanding of the project and be trained for traffic control.
The flagger should be properly outfitted in reflective highway safety clothing, including a hard hat. The flagger should be positioned where drivers can clearly see the person, not partially hidden behind trucks, trees, or signs. Keep your signals consistent and easy to understand. For example, if you are using a stop and slow sign or a red flag, use your other hand to stop or wave drivers slowly through the areas. Don't wave them through with the flag or sign. It may confuse them. Also, make sure other flaggers and work crew members understand your signals so they can anticipate what vehicles will be doing. In cases where traffic narrows to one lane and a flagger at each end is necessary, coordinate the flow with two-way radios or predetermined hand signals. Stay alert. Don't listen to music, read, or talk with other crew members while on the job. Concentrate on the traffic. Never leave the flagging position unattended. The crew foreman will coordinate lunchtime and rest periods. And always plan an escape route to make sure you can get out of the way of traffic or equipment and notify workers in the immediate work area during an emergency.
One final comment about flaggers before we move on. You may be the only point of contact for frustrated drivers as they move through the work area, so you're no doubt going to hear some moaning and groaning. Treat each driver with patience and maintain a positive attitude. Know why the work is being done and when it's scheduled to be finished. The entire water utility may be judged on your actions, so be professional. Now let's get back to the traffic control zones.
Next is the buffer area. Drivers at this point have already been diverted and should be driving at a safe speed. But this zone is designed to give them a little extra space to get with the program in case they weren't paying attention. There aren't specific recommendations for the dimensions of a buffer zone, so design it according to available space. However, do not store equipment, vehicles, or materials in any part of the buffer zone. After the buffer area, drivers enter the work area. This is where the project is actively underway. But even during periods of employees' lunch breaks and other temporary work stoppages, the designated boundaries of the work zone are maintained. Because this is the zone that puts workers at the greatest risk, flaggers are often used to monitor and slow drivers further. Flaggers may also stop traffic when work equipment needs to use or cross the roadway while the project is in progress. The work zone must be designed in a way that crew members are never at risk from traffic as they perform their duties, with plenty of space between the site and moving vehicles. Since water utility work often requires excavation, the resulting dirt pile can provide an added barrier of safety if placed in between workers and nearby traffic. Other examples of boundary devices for transition and work areas include barrels and plastic fencing. For maximum worker protection or to separate lanes of traffic, concrete road dividers are often utilized. Boundary devices and barrier protection will vary for each project depending on factors such as visibility, protection of crew and equipment, and length of time necessary to complete the work. Finally, the termination area is where traffic is returned to its normal flow. Cones, signs, and barricades are again used to gradually guide drivers into resuming traffic patterns. The termination zone extends from the end of the work area to the end roadwork signs if posted. A speed limit sign can also be used to signal drivers to resume normal driving patterns. Although specific dimensions of a termination zone aren't recommended, there are guidelines for tapers which can be followed for both transition and termination zones. A merging taper should be long enough to enable drivers to have advance warning and enough distance to adjust their speeds and merge into a single lane before the end of the transition area. In the termination zone, tapers should take into account the curvature of the road since vehicles are accelerating. The formula for determining taper distance includes speed, length, and width of offset and is a little complicated, so consult the manual on uniform traffic control devices for specifics. One of the most dangerous aspects of controlling road work areas is establishing the parameters of the zones in active traffic areas. Mark and establish the 5 zones before any workers or equipment are on the scene. Place the signs and markers in the advanced warning area first and then move toward the work zone. Never put cones or markers in moving lanes of traffic without proper warning. When you're finished with the work, disassemble the zones by starting from the termination zone and work backwards, removing the advanced warning signs last. If the project takes several days and signs and cones are removed overnight, mark their location if possible for quick and accurate deployment the next day. If they are left in place overnight, check before you start your shift to make sure they have not moved.
That's a quick look at the traffic control zones. Now let's discuss some of the other issues you'll need to consider, such as how your work site will withstand emergency situations.
Police, fire, and medical vehicles may need to travel quickly through the zones you've created. You should evaluate the area's ability to handle this type of traffic and make contingency plans if necessary. You should also anticipate whether some commercial vehicles will need to use a different route because of weight, clearance, width restrictions, or hazardous materials that they are carrying. Consider advising motorists of alternative routes several miles prior to the work area project to encourage them to use other roads and reduce the flow of traffic in your area. Sometimes the project requires you to close the roadway temporarily and set up a detour. Advanced signage should warn that the road will be closed and that there's a detour ahead. The roadway should be barricaded at the point where drivers need to make the detour. Detours should be clearly marked over their entire length so drivers can easily follow them back to the original roadway. Never establish a detour without first consulting with and obtaining the approval of local traffic officials.
Let's discuss vehicle speed through work zones. Keep 2 important facts in mind. First, drivers will only reduce their speed if they clearly perceive the need to do so. And number 2, large reductions in speed, such as from 60 to 30 miles per hour, cause more variation in vehicle speed and consequently more crashes.
The goal of a temporary traffic control zone is to try and reduce the speed of drivers no more than 10 miles per hour. If you need to slow them down more than that, and quite often you will, take extra precautions. You'll also need to take extra care when working at night. Crews working at night are 3 times more likely to be struck by vehicles than their daytime counterparts. Flashing lights well ahead of the work site and traffic control area are essential. Reflective materials on barricades, equipment, and crew members are mandatory. When turned sideways, bending over, or while standing motionless, workers are often mistaken for traffic cones or other safety markers. Motorists are less likely to slow down for a marker than for a worker. In most cases, the traffic control zones we've already talked about need to be increased to account for the reduction of drivers' visibility. And take some time to make sure floodlights used on the job site will illuminate the work and flaggers, but not glare at drivers as they approach. Work in residential and commercial areas carries an added responsibility. Traffic control here must also meet the needs of non-automotive traffic. Signs, barricades, and other devices should be utilized to define walkways so that bicyclists and pedestrians, including the physically handicapped, have access and are safe. When access is disrupted, make sure area residences and businesses understand what is going on, how important the project is, and how long it should take to complete. For large projects, you may want to ask the news media for help in notifying the public. An informed public is usually more understanding and tolerant, and many will choose to avoid the area, which reduces the traffic load. Remember that when you're controlling traffic, information is the key to success. First, gather information about your work site, then provide information about your project to local traffic authorities and the public. Next, use standardized traffic control devices and zones to inform drivers, pedestrians, and others how to navigate around the project. Don't be afraid to modify your plan if it needs changes once in operation. And take extra precautions for special circumstances, such as working in areas of high-speed traffic or at night.
Every project will be a little different, and some will go beyond what we've discussed here, requiring the use of traffic control signal lights or pilot vehicles, for example. But no matter how the traffic control is designed and later modified, the goal is always the same: to protect workers, pedestrians, and drivers as they pass through your project area. It's difficult to keep everyone happy as they drive by this disruption, but if they can drive through safely, you've done your job right.